Welcome back to the weekly recap video for the NFL. We will be covering this week, week 1 for the 2025 NFL season. Man, is it good to have football back. What a very eventful week 1 we had with phenomenal matchups all throughout. If you like this type of content, like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, and I appreciate all the support as we are trying to get to 1,200 subscribers. So without further ado, let's get straight into this one and recap week 1, starting off with the NFC East divisional matchup to kick off the season between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles defeated the Cowboys 24-20 as the Eagles are 1-0 and the Cowboys are 0-1 to begin the year. Dak Prescott went 21 for 34 with 188 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Javonte Williams led the team in rushing with 15 carries and 54 yards and 2 touchdowns. Miles Sanders was a close second with 4 carries and 53 yards, while CeeDee Lamb led the team in receiving with 7 receptions and 110 yards. Miles Sanders also had 1 fumbled loss in the game. Jalen Hurts went 19 for 23 with 152 yards, while he also led the team in rushing with 14 carries with 62 yards and 2 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley came in second with 18 carries for 60 yards and a touchdown. Jahan Dotson led the team in receiving with 59 yards on the day. The Cowboys scored the first points of the game with a touchdown on their opening drive, which was then followed up by a touchdown by the Eagles of their own to tie the game at 7. To start off the second quarter, the Cowboys scored a touchdown, taking a 14-7 lead. The Philadelphia Eagles answered right back to tie it up at 14. Cowboys then scored a field goal to take a 17-14 lead, as then it was responded by a Eagles touchdown as they took a 21-17 lead, and the Cowboys scored a field goal heading into halftime. The Eagles led 21-0. The Cowboys failed to score any more points in the second half as the Eagles got the ball to start off the third quarter and scored a field goal on their opening drive. And with the final score of 24-20, after that score, no team was able to score as the Eagles held on and won this game. The next game of the week was a Friday night game, a AFC West divisional matchup between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The Chargers defeated the Chiefs 21-27. Chargers are 1-0 to start off the year, while the Chiefs fall to 0-1. Patrick Mahomes went 24 for 39 with 258 yards and a touchdown. He had 6 carries for 57 yards and a touchdown rushing, while Pacheco only had 5 carries for 25 yards. Hollywood Brown led the team in receiving with 10 receptions and 99 yards, while Travis Kelce had 2 receptions for 47 yards and a touchdown. Xavier Worthy got hurt running into Travis Kelce on the opening drive. There was 1 fumble by Creed Humphrey, but it was recovered by Mahomes on the play. Justin Herbert went 25 for 34 with 318 yards and 3 touchdowns. Marion Hampton led the team in rushing with 15 carries for 48 yards, while Justin Herbert had 7 carries for 32 yards. Quentin Johnston led the team in receiving with 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. Ladd McConkey had 6 receptions for 74 yards, and Keenan Allen had 7 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Conklin fumbled the ball once, but Ladd McConkey got the ball out of bounds and got a 10-yard penalty for that. The Chiefs got the ball to start off the game and went 3 and out, and on the first drive, the Chargers scored a touchdown, taking a 7-0 lead, and on their first drive in the second quarter, they scored a field goal to take a 10-0 lead. The Chiefs then responded with a field goal of their own, and the Chargers responded with another field goal as the score was 3-13, and Marion Hampton made a mistake of going out of bounds instead of staying in bounds, which allowed the Chiefs to drive down the field and get a field goal for a scramble as the clock expired to end the half, but the score was 13-6 with the Chargers in the lead. Chargers got a 3 and out to begin the second half, and the Chiefs responded with a touchdown of their own, and Harrison Butker missed the extra point, and the Chargers then scored a touchdown of their own, taking a 20-12 lead over the Chiefs. Chiefs then scored a touchdown to open up the fourth quarter, but failed to get the 2-point conversion as the score was 20-18 in favor of the Chargers. Chargers then scored a touchdown to take a 18-27 lead, and then the Chiefs responded with a field goal to cut the lead down to one possession, 27-21, and then Justin Herbert called game, iced it as he got the first down on 3rd and 14 as he got to the edge as he broke contain from Chris Jones and sealed the game right there. This was a fun, phenomenal game to watch. The next game of the week was between the Los Angeles Rams and the Houston Texans, in which the Rams beat the Texans 14-9. The Rams are 1-0 and the Texans are 0-1 to start off the year. CJ Stroud went 19 for 27 with 188 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. Nick Chubb led the team in rushing with 13 carries and 60 yards. Jaden Higgins led the team in receiving with 2 receptions for 32 yards, as Dare Ogunbowale lost a fumble, and Danielle Hunter recovered a fumble on the Texans defense. Matthew Stafford went 21 for 29 with 245 yards and a touchdown. Kyron Williams led the team in rushing with 18 carries, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Puka Nacua led the team in receiving with 10 receptions and 130 yards, while Davis Allen had 1 reception for 13 yards and a touchdown. Colby Parkinson had a fumble, which was lost. Matthew Stafford got 1 fumble, which he recovered, and Braden Fisk had a takeaway in which he recovered a fumble in this game. The Texans opened up the scoring on their second drive with a field goal, and it was then responded by another field goal in the second quarter. And right after the Texans took a 6-0 lead, the Rams scored a touchdown to take a 7-6 lead. The Texans then scored a field goal to end the half as they took a 9-7 lead. The Rams got the ball to begin the second half and immediately scored a touchdown as they took a 14-9 lead, and they held on to the lead as no team scored points after the first drive of the third quarter. Next game of the week was a NFC South divisional matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. The Buccaneers defeated the Falcons 23-20 as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 1-0 and the Falcons are 0-1 to start off the year. Baker Mayfield went 17 for 32 with 167 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also led the team in rushing with 5 carries for 39 yards, with Bucky Irving getting 14 carries for 37 yards on the play. Rookie out of Ohio State, first-round pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led the team in receivings with 4 receptions, 67 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Bucky Irving also had 4 receptions for 8 yards and a touchdown as well. For the Falcons, Michael Penix Jr. went 27 for 42 with 298 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Algier led the team in rushing and tied with Bijan, but Tyler Algier did 24 yards and 10 carries. Bijan did 24 yards with 12 carries, and Michael Penix had 6 carries for 21 yards and a touchdown. Bijan Robinson had 6 receptions for 100 yards as he led the team in receiving, scoring 1 touchdown as well. The Falcons opened up the scoring with their first drive to begin the game as they scored a touchdown on 3 plays, 65 yards in 1:46 seconds. It wasn't until the second quarter that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers got onto the board with a field goal and then a touchdown as they took a 10-7 lead. The Falcons then scored a field goal to tie it up at 10 as that was the score heading into halftime. To start off the third quarter, the Buccaneers got the ball but missed a field goal, and on their second drive they scored a touchdown to take a 17-10 lead. The Falcons then scored a field goal to make it 17-13. In the fourth quarter, the Falcons scored a touchdown, taking a 20-17 lead over the Buccaneers. Buccaneers then scored a touchdown, taking a 23-20 lead over the Falcons. The kicker for the Buccaneers, Chase McLaughlin, then hit the left upright and did not get the extra point as the Buccaneers led 23-20. The Falcons, then led by Michael Penix, got them into field goal range as Younghoe Koo made a 44-yard attempt, which was no good, wide right, and that ended the game right there as the Buccaneers held on to the 23-20 victory. The next game of the week was a AFC North divisional matchup between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. The Bengals defeated the Browns 17-16. The Bengals are 1-0 and the Browns are 0-1 to begin the year. Joe Burrow went 14 for 23 with 113 yards and a touchdown. Chase Brown led the team in rushing with 21 carries for 43 yards and a touchdown. T. Higgins led the team in receiving with 3 receptions and 33 yards, while Noah Fant had 4 receptions for 26 yards and a touchdown. And for the Browns, Joe Flacco went 31 for 45 with 290 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Dylan Sampson led the team in rushing with 12 carries for 29 yards. Raheem Rocket Sanders had 3 carries for 3 yards, but got a touchdown. Jerry Jeudy led the team in receiving with 5 receptions and 66 yards, while Cedric Tillman had 5 receptions for 52 yards and a touchdown on the day. The Bengals opened up the scoring on the opening drive as they scored a touchdown, took a 7-point lead. The Browns then responded back with a touchdown of their own to tie it up at 7. Later on in the second quarter, the Bengals then scored a touchdown to take a 14-7 lead, while the Browns responded with a field goal of their own as we headed into halftime with the Bengals leading 14-10. The Browns got the ball to start off the second half and scored a touchdown on their opening drive, and after the touchdown on the extra point, the kicker Smith was wide right, no good, and that made it 14-16. The Bengals then scored a field goal at the end of the third quarter to take a 17-16 lead over the Browns. The Browns then had a turnover on downs, a missed field goal, and could not score any points at the end of the fourth quarter as the Bengals held on. The next game of the week was a AFC matchup between the Indianapolis Colts and the Miami Dolphins, in which the Colts beat the Dolphins 33-8. The Colts are 1-0 and the Dolphins are 0-1 to begin the year. Tua Tagovailoa went 14 for 23 with 114 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Zach Wilson took over for a drive, going 5 for 8 for 32 yards. Devon Achane led the team in rushing with 7 carries and 55 yards, while Tyreek Hill led the team in receiving with 4 receptions and 40 yards. Achane also had 3 receptions for 20 yards and a touchdown on the day. Tua Tagovailoa had 1 fumble, which was lost on the day, and this was the debut for Indiana Jones. Daniel Jones went 22 for 29, 272 yards, and a touchdown. Jonathan Taylor led the team in rushing with 18 carries and 71 yards, while Daniel Jones had 7 carries for 26 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Michael Pittman Jr. led the team in receiving with 6 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown on the day. Xavier Howard recovered the fumble that Tua Tagovailoa had on the day. The Colts opened up the scoring on their opening drive with a field goal, then scored 2 touchdowns in a row and a field goal as they headed into halftime with a 20-0 lead over Miami to open up the second half. Tua Tagovailoa threw an interception on the drive as the Colts capitalized with a field goal. The Dolphins would then turn the ball over on downs, and to cap off the scoring, the Colts scored another touchdown in the fourth quarter, taking a 30-0 lead over Miami. It wasn't until late in the fourth quarter that the Miami Dolphins got a touchdown, got the 2-point conversion, and to cap it all off, the Colts ended it with a field goal to give us the final score of 33-8. All I can say about the Dolphins is yikes right now. The next game of the week was a AFC matchup between the Las Vegas Raiders and the New England Patriots, in which the Raiders beat the Patriots 20-13. The Raiders are 1-0 and the Patriots are 0-1 to begin the year. Geno Smith made his Raiders regular season debut, going 24 for 34, 362 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Ashton Jeanty led the team in rushing with 19 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown. Brock Bowers led the team in receiving with 5 receptions and 103 yards. He got hurt on the game, and his availability for next game is up in the air. Trey Tucker also had 2 receptions for 54 yards and a touchdown on the day. For the New England Patriots, Drake May threw 46 passes as he went 30 for 46, 287 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Travion Henderson led the team in rushing with 5 carries and 27 yards, and Kayshon Boutte led the team in receiving with 6 receptions and 103 yards. Demario Douglas had 2 receptions for -2 yards, but had a touchdown on the day to open up the scoring. The Raiders scored a touchdown on the opening drive. Patriots then scored a touchdown to tie the game up in the first quarter, and in the second quarter, the Patriots missed a field goal, but then made a field goal on the following drive, taking a 10-7 lead as the Raiders missed a field goal to end the half. Score was 10-7 heading into the third quarter, and after a pick, the Raiders scored a touchdown in the third quarter, taking a 14-10 lead over the Patriots, and scored a field goal to cap off the third quarter, taking a 17-10 lead over the Patriots. The Raiders then scored a field goal in the fourth quarter, taking a 20-10 lead. The Patriots could only then score a field goal, giving us the final score of 20-13, with the Raiders coming out victorious. The next game of the week was a NFC matchup between the New Orleans Saints and the Arizona Cardinals, in which the Cardinals beat the Saints 20-13. The Cardinals are 1-0 and the Saints are 0-1 to begin the year. Kyler Murray went 21 for 29 with 163 yards and 2 touchdowns. Trey Benson led the team in rushing with 8 carries for 69 yards, and Marvin Harrison Jr. led the team in receiving with 5 receptions and 71 yards and a touchdown. James Conner also had 4 receptions for 5 yards and a touchdown on the day. The Saints had Spencer Rattler starting. He went 27 for 46 with 214 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Alvin Kamara led the team in rushing with 11 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown on the day. Juwan Johnson led the team in receiving with 8 receptions for 76 yards on the play. The score was open with a field goal by the Cardinals in the first quarter on their second drive. It was then responded by a Saints touchdown, followed up by a barrage of scoring as the Cardinals scored a touchdown, which was followed up by a field goal by the Saints, and then a Arizona touchdown as Arizona led 17-10 heading into halftime. On their first drive of the second half, the Cardinals then scored a field goal, taking a 20-10 lead, and it wasn't until the fourth quarter that the Saints scored a field goal and the Cardinals held on to their 20-13 victory. The next game of the week was a AFC matchup in which the starting quarterbacks for both teams played against their former teams. The Pittsburgh Steelers defeated the Jets 34-32, as the Steelers are 1-0 and the Jets are 0-1 to begin the year. Aaron Rodgers looked good in the game as he went 22 for 30, 244 yards, and had 4 touchdowns on the day. Jaylen Warren led the team in rushing with 11 carries for 37 yards, while DK Metcalf led the team in receiving with 4 receptions and 83 yards. Calvin Austin III had 4 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown. Ben Skowronek had 1 reception for 22 yards and a touchdown. Jaylen Warren had 2 receptions for 22 yards and a touchdown. And Jonnu Smith capped it off with 5 receptions for 15 yards and a touchdown. Both Kenneth Gainwell and Caleb Johnson had a fumble, which was recovered by Kenneth Gainwell, Skowronek, and Juan Thornhill. Justin Fields went 16 for 22 with 218 yards and a touchdown. Breece Hall led the team in rushing with 19 carries and 107 yards. Justin Fields had 12 carries for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Braylon Allen had 6 carries for 9 yards and a touchdown on the day. Garrett Wilson led the team in receiving with 7 receptions, 95 yards, and a touchdown, and Xavier Gipson had 1 lost fumble on the day. To open up the scoring, the Jets scored a field goal on their opening drive, which was then responded by a Steelers touchdown, and then the Jets scored a touchdown of their own as they missed their field goal with a wide left. The Steelers then responded with a field goal, taking a 10-9 lead. The Jets scored a touchdown, taking a 16-10 lead. Jets then scored another field goal to take a 19-10 lead, followed up by a Steelers touchdown to end the half. The Jets led 19-17 heading into halftime. It wasn't until late in the third quarter that the Jets scored a touchdown to take a 26-17 lead over Pittsburgh, in which Pittsburgh then scored a touchdown to cut the lead to 2. The score was 26-24, which was then followed up by another Steelers touchdown as they took a 31-26 lead. The Jets then scored a touchdown of their own, taking a 32-31 lead. As they went for the 2-point attempt, it went incomplete and did not work. The Steelers then scored a field goal to give us the final score of 34-32, as this was a phenomenal game to watch. The next game of the week was a NFC East divisional matchup between the Washington Commanders and the New York Giants. The Commanders beat the Giants 21-6, as the Commanders are 1-0 and the Giants are 0-1 to begin the year. Russell Wilson went 17 for 37 with 168 yards, no touchdowns, and no interceptions. He also led the team in rushing with 8 carries and 44 yards. Malik Nabers led the team in receiving with 5 receptions and 71 yards. And if you saw the replays, you could tell Malik Nabers was not having a good time with Russell Wilson under the helm. Jaden Daniels went 19 for 30 with 233 yards and 8 touchdowns, while Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt led the team in rushing with 10 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown on the day. Deebo Samuel also had a carry for 19 yards and a touchdown. Deebo Samuel also led the team in receiving with 7 receptions and 77 yards, while Zach Ertz had 3 receptions for 26 yards and a touchdown. And to open up the scoring, the Commanders scored a touchdown on their second drive in the first quarter, followed up by a Giants field goal. The Commanders then scored another touchdown in the second quarter as they took a 14-3 lead heading into halftime. It wasn't until the ending of the third quarter that the Giants scored a field goal to cut it down to a 1-possession deficit. And heading into the fourth quarters, the Commanders had a 14-6 lead as the Commanders scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter to give us the final score of 21-6. The next game of the week was between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Carolina Panthers, in which the Jaguars beat the Panthers 26-10. Jaguars are 1-0 and the Panthers are 0-1 to begin the year. Bryce Young went 18 for 35 with 154 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions, while Chuba Hubbard led the team in rushing with 16 carries for 57 yards. Tetairoa McMillan led the team in receiving with 5 receptions and 68 yards, while Chuba Hubbard had 3 receptions for 32 yards and a touchdown. Bryce Young also lost a fumble throughout the day. Trevor Lawrence went 19 for 31 with 178 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, while Travis Etienne Jr. is having a break it or make it season, in which he led the team in rushing with 16 carries for 143 yards. Brian Thomas Jr. had 1 rushing carry for 9 yards and a touchdown. Brenton Strange led the team in receiving with 4 receptions and 59 yards, while Hunter Long had 1 reception for 6 yards and a touchdown. To open up the scoring, the Jaguars scored a field goal, followed up by a Panthers field goal, tied up at 3 heading into the second quarter. The Jags then scored 2 consecutive touchdowns and a field goal, taking a 20-3 lead heading into halftime. And it wasn't until the fourth quarter that there was points scored again, which was a Jacksonville field goal, which was then followed up by a Panthers touchdown. The Panthers could not score any more points, and the Jaguars scored an extra field goal to give us the final score of 26-10. The next game of the week was between the Denver Broncos and the Tennessee Titans, in which the Broncos beat the Titans 20-12. Broncos are 1-0, while the Titans are 0-1 to begin the year. Cam Ward had his opening game in the NFL, going 12 for 28 with 112 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Tony Pollard led the team in rushing with 18 carries and 60 yards. Tony Pollard also led the team in receiving with one reception for 29 yards on the day. Both Tony Pollard and Cam Ward lost a fumble on the day, while Sebastian Joseph-Day and Dorian Mauzy had a fumble recovery on the day. Bo Nix went 25 for 40 with 176 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. R.J. Harvey led the team in rushing with 6 carries and 70 yards, while J.K. Dobbins had 16 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown. Courtland Sutton led the team in receiving 6 receptions, 61 yards, and a touchdown. Bo Nix and Marvin Mims each lost a fumble on the day. Brandon Jones and Jahdae Barron had a fumble recovery on the day. To open up the scoring, it was the Titans with a field goal on their opening drive, which was then followed up by a Broncos field goal, as we were all tied up at 3 heading into the second quarter. And in the second quarter, the Titans scored a field goal to take a 6-3 lead, which was then followed up by a touchdown by the Broncos a few drives later, as it was capped off by a Titans field goal to end the half. The Broncos led 10-9 heading into halftime. To start off the third quarter, on the Titans' opening drive, they scored a field goal, which was then followed up by Broncos field goal, as we headed into the fourth quarter with the Broncos leading 13-12. It wasn't till the middle of the fourth quarter that the Broncos scored a touchdown and gave us the final score of 20-12. The next game of the week was a NFC West divisional matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks, in which the 49ers beat the Seahawks 17-13. The Niners are 1-0, while the Seahawks fall 0-1 to begin the year. Brock Purdy went 26 for 35 with 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He was hurt following the game and is questionable to start week 2. Christian McCaffrey had an injury coming into this game as well, but he led the team in rushing with 22 carries for 69 yards. Ricky Pearsall led the team in receiving with 4 receptions for 108 yards, and George Kittle had 4 receptions for 25 yards and a touchdown, as he got hurt during the game too. And his backup Jake Tonjes had 3 receptions for 15 yards and a game-winning touchdown. Nick Bosa and Marquez Sigel had a fumble recovery on the day as well. Sam Darnold went 16 for 23 with 150 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Zach Charbonnet led the team in rushing with 12 carries for 47 yards and a touchdown, while Jackson Smith-Njigba led the team in receiving with 9 receptions for 124 yards. Jackson Smith-Njigba had 2 fumbles, in which he lost 1, and Sam Darnold lost 1 fumble on the day as well. To open up the scoring, the Niners scored on their opening drive, which was then followed up by a Seahawks touchdown. And to end the first half, the Seahawks capped it off with a field goal, as they took a 10-7 lead heading into halftime. In the third quarter, the Niners threw an interception and had a blocked field goal. And in the fourth quarter, the Seahawks had a fumble. The Niners tied it up with a field goal at 10 apiece. The Seahawks then scored a field goal later on in the fourth quarter, taking a 13-10 lead. And to cap it all off, the Niners scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter to give us the final score of 17-13. The next game of the week was a NFC North divisional matchup between the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions, in which the Packers beat the Lions 27-13. The Packers are 1-0, Lions are 0-1 to begin the year. Jared Goff went 31 for 39 with 225 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. David Montgomery led the team in rushing with 11 carries and 25 yards. Sam Laporta led the team in receiving with 6 receptions and 79 yards, while Isaac Tesla had 1 reception for 13 yards and a touchdown on the day. For the Packers, Jordan Love went 16 for 22 with 188 yards and 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs led the team in rushing with 19 carries, 66 yards, and a touchdown, while Romeo Doubs led the team in receiving with 2 receptions for 68 yards. Jaden Reed had 3 receptions for 45 yards and a touchdown, while Tucker Kraft had 2 receptions for 16 yards and a touchdown on the day. To open up the scoring, the Packers scored a touchdown and then got a field goal on their next drive, which was then followed up by a Lions field goal, a Packers touchdown, as we headed into halftime with the Packers leading 17-3. To open up the second half, the Lions scored a field goal to make it 6-17, and it wasn't until the fourth quarter that the Packers scored a touchdown, taking a 24-6 lead over the Lions. The Packers then scored a field goal on the following drive, and the Lions scored another touchdown to give us the final score of 27-13. And there is a huge difference for the Lions after losing both their offensive coordinators to the Bears and losing their defensive coordinator from last year to the Jets. It will be interesting to see how the Lions do throughout the year. And we may have had the game of the year already here in Week 1, a rematch of last year's AFC playoff between the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills, in which the Buffalo Bills defeated the Ravens 41-40. The Bills are 1-0 and the Ravens are 0-1 to begin the year. Lamar Jackson went 14 for 19 for 209 yards and 2 touchdowns. Derrick Henry led the team in rushing with 18 carries for 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson had 6 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown on the day. Zay Flowers led the team in receiving with 7 receptions, 143 yards, and a touchdown, while DeAndre Hopkins made a spectacular catch and had 2 receptions for 35 yards and a touchdown on the day. And Derrick Henry had a crucial fumble in the fourth quarter, which was lost and gave the Bills life and allowed them to get to victory. Josh Allen went 33 for 46, 394 yards, and 2 touchdowns, as this was a rematch of 2 consecutive MVPs, Lamar Jackson in 2023 and Josh Allen in 2024 last year. James Cook led the team in rushing with 13 carries, 44 yards, and a touchdown, while Josh Allen had 14 carries for 30 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. Keon Coleman led the team in receiving with 8 receptions, 112 yards, and a touchdown, while Dalton Kincaid had 4 receptions for 48 yards and a touchdown on the day. And Terrell Bernard recovered the Derrick Henry fumble in the fourth quarter. To open up the scoring, the Bills scored a touchdown on their opening drive, which was then followed up by a Ravens field goal. The Ravens then scored a touchdown twice consecutively on 2 consecutive drives, taking a 17-7 lead over the Bills. Then it was an exchange of field goals between the two teams as we headed into halftime, with the Ravens leading 20-13. The Ravens then got the ball to start off the second half, scored a touchdown, which was then followed up by a Bills touchdown. Ravens then scored a touchdown in the third quarter, taking a 34-19 lead. Bills then scored a touchdown and failed to get the 2-point conversion as the score was 34-25. The Ravens then capped it off with a touchdown of their own, taking a 40-25 lead over the Bills. Bills then scored a touchdown later on in the fourth quarter as it was cut down to a 1-possession lead, and Derrick Henry fumbled the ball in deep Ravens territory. Josh Allen and company capitalized, scored a touchdown, failed to get the 2-point conversion, made the Ravens go 3-and-out, and drove down the field to allow the 41-year-old Matt Prater to get the game-winning field goal. What a game that was. The final game of the week was Monday Night Football between 2 NFC North divisional opponents, the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. This was also J.J. McCarthy's first regular season game in the NFL. He went 13 for 20 with 143 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, which was a pick 6. Jordan Mason led the team in rushing with 15 carries, 68 yards, while J.J. McCarthy had 2 carries for 25 yards and 1 rushing touchdowns. Aaron Jones Jr. tied in receiving with Justin Jefferson. Both had 44 yards and a touchdown each. Jay Ward recovered a fumble as well on the day. Caleb Williams went 21 for 35 with 210 yards and a touchdown. Caleb Williams led the team in rushing with 6 carries, 58 yards, and a touchdown. DJ Moore led the team in receiving with 3 receptions and 68 yards. He got the wind knocked out of him throughout the game. We'll see how he recovers and his availability in the following weeks. Rome Odunze had 6 receptions for 37 yards and a touchdown, while DJ Moore lost a fumble on the day. To open up the scoring, the Bears scored on their opening drive, taking a 7-0 lead, and in the second quarter, the Vikings then scored a touchdown. The Bears then scored a field goal, followed up by a Vikings field goal to end the half. The Bears took a 10-6 lead heading into halftime, in which, in the third quarter on the Vikings' opening drive, J.J. McCarthy threw a pick-6, in which the Bears took a 17-6 lead heading into the fourth quarter. And in the fourth quarter, the Vikings then scored a touchdown but failed to get the 2-point conversion, as the score was Chicago leading 17-12. The Vikings then scored a touchdown on the next drive, taking a 20-17 lead over the Bears, while the Vikings then scored another touchdown to make it 27-17. The Bears would then scored a touchdown to make it 27-24. The Vikings went 3 and out, and with only a couple seconds remaining, the Bears could not get it done, as the Vikings won 27-24. And watching the game, watching J.J. McCarthy, Vikings fans have got to be happy with what they are probably going to get out of the player. And, the Bears looked a lot better than they did last year now that they've got the coach Ben Johnson, and Caleb Williams made steps to improve. And that will recap all 16 games for all 32 teams here in Week 1 of the 2025 NFL season. If you like this type of content, like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, and I appreciate all the support as we are trying to get to 1,200 subscribers. Let me know in the comments below which performances by players or teams surprised you this week, and what games are you looking forward to heading into Week 2. If you're a fan of the NFL and college football, stay tuned, as we'll be covering both all season long. Appreciate all the support, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care.